I'm Samuel. I'm from PC Gamer. I'm joined here by the team at Failbetter. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Liam. I'm the Director of Development.
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm the Art Director and the CEO.
And I'm Chris. I'm the Narrative Director.
And these guys are here to talk about Sunless Skies, which is currently running a Kickstarter campaign to the 3rd of March. Absolutely demolished its target of 100,000. It is now past 275,000, is that right?
Yeah, we can get up to a minute updates from down there. But we just broke 270 yesterday, I think. The amazing thing was that we broke the actual target, which was 100,000 in 4 hours, which kind of took us by surprise.
Just after we'd all gone home.
Oh yeah, well, the pub in my case.
Yeah.
But, so that was incredibly overwhelming and lovely.
I had to get picked up from the bus stop because I'd kind of lost control of my limbs. I was so excited.
It was just, seriously, it was amazing. The community just stepped up immediately, gave us everything we needed to make the game, and told all their friends about it. So we're just incredibly grateful.
That's cool. So obviously it's a follow-up to Sunless and takes us into space. Do you want to talk us through the kind of conception of the game, and for people who aren't already aware of it, maybe talk them through the kind of premise?
Yeah, okay. So Sunless, as I'm sure you all know, takes place on a vast underground lake where the City of London has been stolen by bats at the sort of close of the 19th century. Sunless Skies, 10 years later, one possible future of that world is basically Victorians in space.
Yeah. In trains.
Yes. Space trains with Victorians. Clearly it's a completely absurd idea, and we laughed a lot when we first thought about it. But then we started thinking, actually, once you get past how crazy this is, the Victorians in space would be awesome and terrifying, because they were really good at things like building and colonization and not really caring much about indigenous life. And when you take away sort of minor inconveniences like gravity and a limited pool of resources to exploit, then they would probably be pretty terrifying.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, actually, one of the kind of interesting ways you put it to me was that the game isn't meant to be a representation of space. It's meant to be a representation of what the Victorians might have seen as space, right?
Yeah. I mean, we didn't want to do real space because it's just
boring, so empty.
Nothing there.
It's just
Nothing
nothing
there,
there, man. It wasn't real space any more than Fallen London was real London, or Sunless Sea is like a real ocean. We wanted somewhere that was full of monsters and danger and stuff happening. So I think our starting point was what the Victorians might have imagined space would be like. And from that we went to what the Victorians might have imagined space would be like when they had about 3 too many absinthe. And it just developed from there. Chris, I mean, you did a lot of the sort of initial world building on this, didn't you?
I did a lot of absinthe. Yeah. Yeah, and we looked at kind of Victorian fiction about space and lots of art that they'd made, and some very early science fiction, so not stuff that was about sort of interstellar travel, but C.S. Lewis wrote a trilogy about space travel in which all astronauts are naked.
Yeah.
Because it's you're out there and there's suns everywhere pouring out light and heat, so it's really hot up there. So all the astronauts are naked except for like a tool belt.
Yes, they had a bandolier with weights, so
so they didn't float off. Yeah.
This is not actually what we're going to.
Yeah, we're not doing that. We're not making. What, Paul? We need you to draw about 100 different naked people wearing tool belts.
It is amazing though, because clearly they were really thinking about like the science behind what would it be like to be out in a vacuum, and then just kind of getting it very, very wrong. There's an Edgar Allan Poe story that's about a man who takes a hot air balloon up to the moon, and he talks a lot about the fact that his ears popped. It's like, yeah, I imagine your ears would pop if you were in space. His cat gives birth to a litter of kittens, and they're fine, but then when they return to Earth, like they're struggling with the atmosphere, because that's how it works. Whatever environment you're born into, that's your setup for life.
So in terms of like the narrative possibilities that opens up to you, or even like for you, Paul, like artistically, like what kind of like scope did this give you to be creative based on what you'd already done with Sunless Sea?
Yeah, huge, terrifying, too much scope, really. I was initially sort of like, where do I even start with this? One of the first things we tested and got working was a sort of parallax scrolling system, which immediately means that we don't just have to do very simple, here is a thing in 2D and here is the sea, which is what we did last time.
It was very difficult to convey depth in Sunless Sea.
Yeah, it was a real problem with atmosphere because top-down is not a naturally atmospheric camera point of view, I don't think. And we got around it with lots of tricks, but we wanted to give this sort of sense of dizzying depth. So we've got sort of multiple layers going down. We're doing a lot of stuff with mist and fog.
Yeah.
Because mist and fog are scary and very useful for hiding stuff. Monsters, for instance, and where things coiling out of the fog is a sort of favorite nightmare of mine.
It's the Ridley Scott approach. Don't show anything too clearly, just pump fog into the room.
Yeah, or if you guys have seen The Mist or read the novella it's based on, I think that was on my brain a lot, is the idea that the shapes of these things out there could be literally anything. So we're sort of doubling down on that.
But it lets us achieve a scope to the environments that we couldn't do in Sunless Sea at all. In Sunless Sea is purely the surface level.
Yeah.
And now we can, so this is the surface level, this is the area you need to interact with, but then we can go nuts on the stuff underneath it.
Yeah, this is it, it's great. And on the narrative level, I mean, Chris will talk about this more than me, but we can go much further into detail on the kind of factionalism that's happening out there. So we've got the Victorian Empire, which we talked about, but we wanted the environment itself to be an active fight-back force, something that was, actively resisting conquest. And I've run out of things to say there, so I'm going to look at you pointedly.
I guess the space that the Victorians are entering isn't a kind of blank canvas. It's not empty. It's already populated by forces that have ruled the universe and established its laws for millions of years. And someone has been killing these things, creating these power vacuums that the Victorians are flooding in to take over. But that means that there's all these established kind of hierarchies and habits and customs and societies already there that the Victorian Empire is bumping into and sort of saying, but they don't even drink tea. And these powers, because they set the rules of the universe, when they die, the thrones that they established are empty, and people can sit upon them and exert control over things like death and time and distance.
This is what we have instead of stars. The judgments, they're called. We've got some footage of the game, haven't we? If we can... Somewhere? Oh, there we go. It'll give people a better idea of what we're saying.
I've started picking the trailer music now based on what I think will sound good from being sat on stage where the bass is coming through the speakers. You've already with the Kickstarter campaign, you've gone into a lot of depth of what this kind of universe will entail in terms of lore. Chris, time is a kind of currency out in space? Is that
yes, so the bit of space that the Victorians occupied was originally ruled by the Judgment, one of the Judgments who controlled time. So Queen Victoria now sits upon this throne that lets her exert control over time to an extent. And they mine hours from a distant part of the galaxy and ship them back to Victoria, who will then hand them out to her favourites. So if she likes you, you get to live longer. Or if she doesn't like you, you get to spend a literal eternity in the Tower of London, in the cells. And she uses that for the Empire's kind of using time as part of the cogs of its industry to make its factories more efficient, to make distance less of a problem. They're taking a very Victorian kind of Thomas Telford approach to it and just applying it wherever they can.
Modify anything at all.
Sure. So obviously this is a survival exploration game, so replaying kind of roguelike style replays is kind of like part of the DNA of the game, like it was for Sunless Sea. Can you talk about? I understand that you've got kind of consequences to your actions that carry over between playthroughs this time. Can you talk about those kind of persistent narrative elements and how they change the experience versus playing Sunless Sea?
It was worth talking about how we've changed this whole system from Sunless Sea, because Sunless Sea was an experiment in trying to combine roguelike mechanics with sort of a story-based game.
It's important in Sunless Sea that you come up against these survival mechanics and you have to make narrative choices, and we kind of wanted to make sure that there was a lot of consequence to that choice. So it's you're not just going back to your last checkpoint. Like, you're going to have to start, or you're going to have to go on this journey again. Yeah,
and this meant that the penalties if you made a mess of it and if you died or if you made the wrong choice were very severe. It's very easy to die in Sunless Sea, particularly in the early game. And in some ways, I think that worked really well. It produced a sort of atmosphere of dread, and players got very, very tense playing the game, which is what we were after. But because it's a story-based game, if you die and you go back to the beginning, you're playing a lot of these stories again from the start. And the game didn't enough acknowledge the fact that you were continuing a legacy, I think. And particularly for late players, it got to be kind of a pain, I think, having to start from scratch and do the whole thing again. So we wanted to try and preserve that sense of fear and horror without making people start from scratch every time.
It's also about creating that sense that the people who've come before you are sort of like, blazing a trail that you can follow, like almost in the tradition of like polar expeditions, like everyone not necessarily making it, but pushing further forward, leaving something behind, like information, a path that you can follow. So we really want to build on that idea that your previous captain is going to leave something that, when you start again, you try again, you've just got that edge, and you will maybe succeed where they failed.
Sure. So when it comes to the kind of the narrative kind of consequences side of that, if you pick up your previous captain's trail, like how does the kind of world account for the choices you've made in a previous playthrough?
So there's certain stories that we flag as persistent and treat as world states, and those ones are inherited. And other kind of more minor stories will reset, so you can play them again and take different choices. And some of those will be kind of have random elements to them. But in particular, the big kind of political consequences that you have. So there's a war brewing between the British Empire and between the colonists in the Reach who want to be independent. And you'll be able to influence the direction of that war and who controls that region of space. And if your captain dies partway through, your next captain will pick up exactly where they left off. And one of the things we want to experiment with is these world states. Very few of them are permanent once they reach a tipping point. So if you engage in this war and you fight on the side of the Empire and London takes over a major port, when you die, when your next captain starts up, that port will still be under the control of London. But your next captain might say, well, I hated my dad, he was a scumbag. I'm going to undo all the works that he struggled for and then fight for the other side and drag that control away from London and pass it to the rebels instead.
What kind of challenges does that present you from a kind of writing point of view?
We will find out when we write it. But one of the... We don't just want it to feel like a slider. We want it to feel like you're making important choices that's pushing this one way or the other. And so we're working on the assumption that a lot of the activities that you do in that sector of space will contribute to one or the other side, whether you want them to or not. Yeah. So if you find a really nice trading opportunity running munitions to a particular port, that will make you a whole lot of money, but it might, if it's a rebel-aligned port, it will also increase the rebels' strength as opposed to London. So it might have consequences that you weren't perhaps entirely keen on.
We like the idea of unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Particularly stuff that you don't pick up till later. So some of the monsters we're thinking about might plant seeds on your vessel.
Yeah.
That you weren't even aware about until sort of later on in the game, when suddenly you're sprouting, horrifying mushrooms all over your spaceship.
Yeah.
So that sense of something seeing more in games now is that sense of we don't necessarily tell you that your actions have changed the world all the time, but you'll find out about it later. I think that adds this sort of sense of consequence to stuff. The Witcher does that a lot.
Surprise is one of the kind of stated goals we've got on our internal documents for the stories we're writing. Surprise is up there amongst one of them. So yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of that. Yeah, boo!
Yeah, you're not kind of like the hero of this galaxy. You're just some person like trying to make your way. And if you think you're special, you're not, and you're going to die, and the whole world will go on without you. And
we just hate people, basically.
Yep.
This is our message to the world.
Something else that you're kind of, I understand, like refining or changing from Sunless Sea is combat as well. Can you talk about your kind of like your thoughts on that at this point in the development process?
Yeah, I mean it's still very early days, but it's kind of great the opportunity that Sunless Skies presents to take a look at the combat system we had in Sunless Sea and use what we learned from that. And we did learn a lot. I mean, we scrapped one combat system entirely in Sunless Sea and replaced it. And it's a qualified success. No, like it's we're kind of pleased with the atmosphere of it, but we've realised it left something to be desired in terms of it's very similar everywhere you play it, and it feels like it goes counter to something I feel we do really well, which is try and inject character into like the denizens of our games. And like one of the things that really like is a bit of a shame in Sunless Sea is if you fight a ship, like you fight a pirate ship and you fight a crab, and they behave the same way and they got the same motivations. And if there was anything I'd want more in the world, it's a crab with proper motivation.
Motivated crabs.
Nothing is more important.
So, like, our approach with it this time around is very much going to be, kind of putting the like the motivation and the personality of the kind of like the enemies first, and hopefully rewarding players for like identifying what's unique about that enemy, not just based on, oh, well, that one's tougher than me, so I'll go and avoid it, which is sort of the system we've got in Sunless Sea, but sort of knowing that one will leave me alone under these particular circumstances, and if I'm fast enough and smart enough, I'll be able to outmaneuver that one. So there's going to be more of a skill element to it this time round, though we're really really keen to make sure that it doesn't feel like a combat system that doesn't belong in the kind of game that Sunless Sea is. Like it's a game where you should feel like you're going to be on the receiving end of a beating more often than the other way around.
It'll be measured, I think. I mean, we're not going for a sort of schmuppy feel for the whole thing.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I mean, a spaceship is just basically more maneuverable than a steamship, which is a big advantage that's handed to us right from the off.
Yeah.
Part of the difficulty with Sunless Sea was all you could do was that. So it's hard to fight under those circumstances.
Sure. Can you talk about your ship itself and like your crew as well, and how you kind of built up that system for this game? Yeah,
I'd love to. It's my favourite bit. It's not a train. That's the first thing I'm going to say. I know it looks like a train, but it's not a train. The thinking here was that we wanted at least a sort of level of technological plausibility to this. So, if the Victorians did actually make it to space, how would that work? And obviously the railway was one of the sort of peak innovations of the time. And we felt that taking that technology and translating it into something that could fly was like a really rich theme. And with Sunless Sea, we had this sort of giant super trope of the ocean, which you can do so much with. Everybody knows, okay, you're on the ocean, you've got sea monsters, you've got ships, you've got lighthouses. Everybody understands the terrain. And with our sort of unusual vision of space, it's a little harder to orientate yourself. And trains and the train system, locomotion, felt like a really good way of of guiding the player in there.
Gives you a shared vocabulary.
Yes, exactly. You've got signal boxes and you've got conductors.
Yep.
And you've
engines and boilers and...
What are those wonderful things that turn trains around at stations?
Turnstile.
Sam knows.
Oh, roundhouse, yeah.
Thanks, Sam. So yeah, it just felt like a framework for the weirdness that would allow people in, and they're just really cool to
Trains
draw.
are really cool.
Yeah.
They're also kind of terrifying if you stop and like think about them. Like these giant metal cylinders, not even that giant, like not very large metal cylinders filled with people and steam.
Yeah.
Like that you're going to try and like navigate through, you know, hazardous terrain with. Like it's just, I find the idea of being trapped in one of these ships really, really terrifying.
Yeah.
And if you, we went, we sort of did a bit of research. We went to the London
Transport Museum.
London Transport Museum, and the steam trains they had for the underground are. It's like someone just went, oh yeah, steam train. Can you make that, you know, half the size and fit twice as many people in? It's just a horrible idea, like being like trapped. And one of the things that we really want to emphasize in Sunless Skies is you do not have much space to play about with.
Yeah.
Like you're not on a giant steamliner anymore with enough hold space to take everything you could ever possibly dream of. Like these little like jaunts across the across space are going to be in close quarters. You're going to be on top of like one another. You're going to be like resting on like the supplies that you've taken. Like it's a very, very dangerous journey that you're undertaking.
Your first mate's gone mad, so you've locked him up in the brig. It's incredibly cold outside and the heaters aren't working. Just constant peril, basically.
And the Victorians did just loads of mental stuff with trains, like the Necropolis trains, where London, Victorian London, very crowded. They ran out of space in the cemeteries. So to bury people, they bought a big cemetery outside of London, and then they had Necropolis trains that would carry carriages full of corpses to the cemeteries, and you bought a ticket to put your beloved relative on board, and you could buy a third-class ticket or a second-class ticket or a first-class ticket for the corpse to go along in. So it's Victorians, they're crazy.
It does sound very handy, though. I mean, you know, if you're on a budget, I mean, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, we were thinking of having something not a million miles removed in that, weren't we?
Yeah, I think. But we've already. One of the stretch goals, one of the legendary wrecks we've got is a Necropolis train where the stories do say that the corpses all woke up and commandeered the train and sailed it off to somewhere more pleasant.
So in terms of the characters you meet or the character you play, like, can you talk about how the kind of like context changes the sort of the kind of people you meet and like and how it informs you as a character, like what kind of opportunities that presents you as storytellers?
I think one of the key themes of the game is who you actually are as the player. The idea being that this is a universe where not everybody's watching all the time. So if you have the opportunity to do something that you wouldn't do in the sort of the light of the public, would you take it? So the idea of corruption and compromise and whether you change who you are in order to fit the circumstances when it's dark outside and no one's looking is really key to us. Other characters, well, we're still working on those. We have a few.
Yeah, we get, and there'll be a system similar to Sunless Sea where you recruit officers to appoint to your vessel.
You'll be able to romance some of them?
Yes, yeah, we really need to work out how romance is going to work. Yeah, many people want, but basically there's a small but vocal section of our fan base who basically want it to be entirely about romancing your officers.
Possibly your ship sometimes.
Yeah, a
really
squid,
anything that's available.
Anything, yeah, a sun, whatever's about, really, yeah.
They see it, they want it.
So, yeah, we want to make those people happy, but not too happy. So,
well, part of the fun of this is because we don't specify gender in character creation, which makes the writings of these scenes
yeah, you say fun.
challenging.
Yes, yes. Yeah, writing romance scenes with two characters where you don't know anything about the parts involved for at least one of the characters is
Yes.
challenging. Yes.
And the other one might be a squid. So,
yeah, the other one might be a squid.
So I know you've built this facet system as well, where your player character, you basically pick up kind of shards of personality as you go that kind of shape who you are, kind of retroactively. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we're all big RPG fans. And that means we have many opinions about character creation and how it should work and how it shouldn't. But one of the big problems with RPG games is you can spend sort of half an hour creating a character that you then go on to play, and you're having to make all these decisions without having played the game yet. And you're only kind of getting to see a small portion of the content in terms of the content allowed by character options. So what we wanted to do was combine character creation with character progression and basically stretch it out across your whole career in the game. And we also wanted to, rather than leveling up being about putting another point in strength, we wanted to inject story into it, because story is one of the things we're good at. So when you level up, you choose a facet, which is like a nugget of story, which includes modifications to your stats, kind of bonuses to your relationships with different sorts of people, potentially valuable rewards that you can trade into advanced stories. So when you level up, you might, for example, choose a mentor, and that mentor might be the Blind Bruiser, who's a character in the game. And then when you encounter the Blind Bruiser, he will recognize you. And potentially, he'll respond to you differently than if you hadn't got that facet. And certain facets can unlock other ones. So if you take the mentor facet, you might then later take a feud with your mentor facet. And to develop these stories of your character. So at the end, your character sheet kind of looks like a timeline of your life. And a lot of the decisions you're making, some of them are retroactive about things that happened before you started play. And a bunch of other ones are things that you unlocked during the game. So if you were the key figure in the big Battle of the Rebellion, in the Battle of New Winchester, you might be able to take Hero of New Winchester as a facet, which gives you certain stat bonuses and then changes content that you'll see in the game.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. I'll ask you one more question then. I'll turn to the audience, because obviously you've got a ferociously passionate fan base based on your Kickstarter success. But can you talk about kind of stretch goals you've got coming up as we kind of enter we're in the second half of the campaign now? Can you talk about what else you might have lined up? Or?
Can we? Hannah's looking at me, so I'm going to be careful. We have just passed the Aunt stretch goal. This makes no sense if you don't understand.
Well, okay, I can do this.
You give me the Aunt.
The stretch goals were a bit exciting because obviously we hit our target in 4 hours, and it would have been mad and arrogant of us to have prepared all our stretch goals beforehand. So we sort of came back after on Monday, and we're like, oh Jesus, we need stretch goals. And we had ideas for our stretch goals, but we hadn't written them all up in nice Kickstarter language and everything.
Yeah.
But the one we've just unlocked last night was in Fallen London, one of our other games. There's a much beloved story where your aunt visits you, and you basically have to keep her on the straight and narrow because she discovers drugs and devils and orgies, and you have to kind of steer her to navigate the perils of a very cosmopolitan London. And our players very much enjoyed looking after nursemaiding their aunt or encouraging her on these activities. And the stretch goal we just reached unlocks the aunt as an officer that you can appoint to your ship.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to take your aunt around with you and keep her out of trouble on a cosmic scale.
Or fail to.
Or fail to, yeah.
She got dragged off to hell in one of the...
Yeah, that's one outcome for the aunt. She can sell her soul and end up taken to hell, yeah.
And then the one after that, which we're just working on, is one of my absolute faves, which is the guests. Which is a really frightening monster concept that we thought was probably a bit too complex to get into the base game, but if we can do it as a stretch goal. So these are creatures that infest starships, sort of giant worm leech type creatures, but you don't know they're there when you're approaching them. There may be some clues.
What you see is a ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
slightly bulging.
Maybe a bit. Yeah, maybe oozing slightly. Yeah.
But yeah, you get too close and it suddenly explodes into this ball of terrifying black leeches.
What I can only describe as a tempest of leeches. Yeah. Yeah.
So they sort of like being in inhabited locations. They're very friendly, really. They want to get in and
they like warm spaces.
Warm themselves by the fire, and unfortunately, they kind of they occupy spaces pretty thoroughly, and nothing else is likely to survive their presence. So the fires quickly die, and it's no longer an inhabited space. So they're just always looking to move on and just like wriggle in next to you.
They just want to be loved.
Horrible.
That was your idea, wasn't
it? That was partly Mac and Lottie. Gave 2 ideas that we mushed together to make into an unholy amalgam. Yeah.
That probably is the most horrifying stretch goal in Kickstarter's history.
Yeah, we like people to work for the awful things we're going to do to them. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll turn the questions to the audience then.
Please ask questions.
No questions.
Sam, ask a question about trains.
It just means we've been incredibly thorough.
There we go. Everyone knows everything.
You guys know as much about the game as we do now. Apparently
not. Will the rats have made it to space?
The rats make it everywhere. Yes, if they made it out to sea, they will make it into space. So yes, the Fallen London has small, talkative, mechanically genius rats, and they will definitely have a presence in Sunless Skies as well. Yeah.
They were an item you could equip on your ship in Sunless Sea, I believe. The pneumatic rat sender.
Pneumatic rat sender for
when you really where it needs to be.
Fast. Yeah.
Yes.
You've got that T-shirt, haven't you? The rats get everywhere.
Yeah.
So rats confirmed.
Yeah.
I think. Next question is: are there going to be bats?
Are there going to be bats? There will be bats.
Cool.
Hey, Luke.
Hello.
Do you want to talk a bit more about customization options for ships and things? Because obviously, in Sunless Seas, there wasn't much customization option available. I mean, you could, but everything's so expensive. I know you want to avoid that to a certain extent, but...
Yeah, we have a more tiered system for upgrades now. We want the ship customization to be something you're doing more often. We want it to be something that you bear in mind when you're taking a journey. So if you're undertaking a particular journey to a particular port, you know you'll encounter certain challenges on the way, and so you will change your ship's loadout to account for those specific challenges. So you know this sort of monster's going to be there. It's a high damage monster. Let's equip the better armor. Or there's a monster on the way that is soothed by music. So let's equip the gramophone and the external speaking tubes and the scratchy copy of Blue Danube.
Yeah, so in the same way that you can make particular character choices in Sunless Sea, and we create stories that allow, divergent approaches, so that we can accommodate different sorts of character. We sort of want the same options to be available for your ships this time. There's, as I've mentioned before, they're going to be smaller, and so trade will really only be practical to you if you're willing to sacrifice some of the space you might have had for equipment to actually stow more cargo in. We've got this in Sunless Sea. You're always returning to like one central port. Like journeys all across the sea basically end in London. And that means that everything that can be bought or sold is done so in London. And that means from the beginning of the game, everything is available to you. To try and make it so that you had to like earn these items that you could, kit out your ship with, they just have really big price tags. The value of money is sort of different in the High Wilderness. You probably won't find that you're having to constantly scrimp and save to buy more equipment. You may just have to go on a longer journey to go find it. Or you might find that you don't have the particular sort of like skills to use them. So there may be a cannon that you've got your eye on, but unless your iron skill is high enough, you're not going to be able to use that. So there's a lot of different ways in which we're going to give you access to equipment, rather than just sort of saying, you save up your money, all your pennies, and you spend it all you want. There'll be lots of different ways for you to kind of like, kit out your ship.
You're right there.
Hi.
What kind of non-player events will change the balance of power between the Empire and the colonists?
That's an interesting question. We're not sure yet. It's something that we want to do. We want to have the sense that the world's ticking over, independent of you. We don't want it to happen to such an extent that the player's actions are made irrelevant. But one idea we're noodling with at the moment, and this is very noodly, this is not confirmed or anything, but it would be nice to have... one of the things that was really nice about Sunless Sea was that sense of returning to home at London. And doing kind of little domestic things, like spending a night at home and things. And it would be nice if, we think, when you return to a big port in Skies, you sit down and you read the newspaper, and we can use that to trigger various shifts in the political situation. So you sit down, you read the newspaper, and the rebels, the Tacites, have won a recent engagement, and we use that to nudge the condition towards the rebels. We want to do some of it. We need to work out exactly how much it's going to impact things and exactly how it's going to work, but we do want to do it.
Have we talked about the Isambard line publicly?
Oh, no, talk about the Isambard line.
Oh, should we? Yes,
Yeah,
let's do it. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's the major trade route between two of the locations in the high wilderness actually have a series of like signal boxes along them. This is basically to act as a guide. Like if these signal boxes are green, you know that all is well, and you can continue. Your goods will get to their destination without trouble. This is one area in which the Tacites and the Stovies are like constantly kind of like at war. There's this constant like shift for who's in control of this line. So you may find that like you're given the opportunity to swing it in your favour, whatever group might have your favour at that point. And that will open up opportunities for your allies and close it off from your enemies. But equally, that's not something that's going to necessarily stick around the entire time. Other things will happen that could shift the balance of power once again.
And so this is like the major trading route between London and the frontier, and it's this is one of the things that the Queen, the Empress, is using her time authority over. So travel along this thing feels like it takes much less time to people who use it. It's basically like a fast travel system. And yeah, your choice is going to be, do you want to keep it up and allow London that easy access to the frontier? Or do you want to let it fall into disarray? Do you want to help break it and make it harder for London to extend her control? And it'll have other knock-on effects as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's real advantages to that being down as well, because if you're the only ship that can actually get through, suddenly the value of the items in your hold just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we've got time for one more question. Okay, sorry. Time for one more question?
Hey. Hello.
Hey.
Since this is a game which is quite a lot about slightly terrifying space imperialism, are you thinking of including any other non-monstrous races in this world that will be subject to the politics?
We've had a lot of discussions about this.
Yeah.
Because what there are cultures out here already, so there has to be a civilization out here. But what we didn't want was alien race A, green-skinned mystics with bumpy foreheads. Alien race B, honourable warrior race with bumpy foreheads. Alien race C, unscrupulous traders with bumpy foreheads. So the rule has been there are no other humans. There are no other humanoid races. The humans only come from Earth. And that's quite challenging because then you have to work out what they are going to look like. The example we've got that we're working with at the moment is these vast conglomerate fungal intelligences that, I was going to say these actually exist. These don't exist. But in, in certain parts of North America, there are networks of fungus that stretch under the topsoil, but they stretch across miles and miles, and it's basically a single funganoid organism that can cover square miles. And they're similar, so we're going with a similar idea, that these are these vast fungal growth, and the bigger they are, the more intelligent they get. And if they ever split off, they get less intelligent, but they also become independent and separate entities, and will resist at all costs reincorporation, because that would mean the death of one of them. So that's the sort of alien that we're going for. We're going for big, strange concepts that will make for challenging stories. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I would also like to thank everyone. Last time we opened the floor to questions, I had to answer 20 minutes of probing questions about cannibalism from a precocious 14-year-old. So thank you for nobody asking about cannibalism. Thank you.
Okay. But if you have any of those questions afterwards, we are down to explain cannibalism.
We are practiced now.
We've got it down, though. I mean,
yeah.
It really helped us work out our method.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
So is there anything else you guys wanted to spotlight as we wrap up?
Kickstarter. Go back. back. Oh, Kickstarter.
There's still time.
So you're running till the 3rd of March, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you can back them now. And Failbetter on Twitter, Facebook?
Yes, at Failbetter Games, Failbetter on Facebook. Just stick Sunless Skies into Kickstarter and it'll come up.
Yeah.
And hey, yeah.
Okay. No, that's great.
Bad segue.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.